Ah, there you are. I knew you would come. My orb told me, you see. Ah yes, I've been sitting here, pondering my orb. I'm wondering just how the heck they manufacture these things. I mean, they look 3D printed, they claim they're 3D printed, but are they really? You will reveal your secrets! This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. More on them later. How's it going, guys? Angus here from Maker's Muse. Hope you had a great festive season. What I have here is one of the gifts we got from my wonderful relatives, a planet lamp. But you've probably also seen these available as moon lamps, galaxy lamps. They were all over Twitter and TikTok not too long ago, and it's honestly easy to see why. It's a light up sphere with this really interesting and detailed texture, and some of them are full color, like this one, and they're reasonably cheap and easy to get. The box has obviously seen better days by the time it arrived to us, but if you do buy one of these, what you can expect to find is the orb, a simple but nice wooden stand, remote, and a little USB to barrel jack charging cable, and that's about it. The idea is simple, but the effect really is quite stunning. You can use the remote to flick between RGBW, as well as brightness and special color modes like fading or blinking. And it also reacts to tapping, which honestly is kind of annoying. If you just want to move it, it just turns on and changes modes. But unfortunately, the battery inside does seem to be quite gutless. It doesn't last very long, but the cable itself is pretty discreet. So if you want a cheap and pretty moonlight thing, then I guess you can stop watching. But if you're familiar with this channel at all, you'll know I cannot leave this here, because also on the box it states, by 3D technology. And I just have to know, is this thing 3D printed? Because if not, just how the heck do they manufacture it? Well, if you jump on Alibaba and search for moon lamp or galaxy lamp, you'll find a huge number of listings for what is essentially the same product. There are subtle variations, like if it's colored or just white, and the size too, but tons of the listings claim this thing really is 3D printed. Just in case you're unfamiliar with 3D printing, it's an additive manufacturing process. This means that models are built up one layer at a time, and manufacturing this way means there's very little geometric limitations. You can easily 3D print complex textures and structures without much effort, and a hollow globe wouldn't be all that challenging for most 3D printing technologies to pull off. If you search for moon lamp on YouTube, you'll actually find a few videos showing these lamps being printed on FDM 3D printers in PLA plastic, which is a bioplastic derived from corn. So I think it's high time to take a closer look at my orb. Okay, so the color image they put over the top makes things a little hard to see, but the texture isn't some kind of just randomly applied surface. There really are little craters, valleys, and plateaus over the entire surface of the map, as if it really was copied from the surface of the moon. And zooming in even closer, bam, layer lines. Remember, 3D printing is additive, so the presence of these layering artifacts is proof that this thing really is 3D printed. Wow, not so fast. While some areas of the lamp display really clear evidence of layer lines, others not so much. In fact, there are many areas that look like defects, like lumps that have been sanded back or voids in the surface, almost as if this is a copy of a 3D printed object. Well, there are a few different ways of manufacturing hollow plastic objects, but I suspect this has been made using a process called rotational molding. With rotational molding, a mold is filled with a predetermined amount of plastic, which is then heated to melting temperatures as the mold is physically rotated slowly around all axes. The machines that do this look absolutely wild, and as the mold rotates, the molten material inside coats the wall in a fairly even skin of material at a thickness that's determined by how much plastic you put in the mold to start with. After the plastic has been given a chance to melt and evenly coat the walls, it's then cooled, the plastic solidifies in place, and then you can release it from the mold, and you get a hollow plastic object. Some products you might be familiar with that use this technology include water tanks, which are made using these gigantic rotational molds, and Easter eggs. Just replace molten plastic with chocolate, which is much tastier in my opinion, but the process is much the same. But if this isn't 3D printed, why does it have the telltale artifacts of 3D printing? I think I know why. If you've ever done any mold making using silicons, urethanes, and similar, you might be familiar with the concept of a master. A master is the object you're copying using mold making techniques. I reckon the factory has 3D printed the original. Judging by the print quality, it was most likely a resin 3D printing system like this large format top-down SLA I saw on my visit to Shining 3D way back in 2015, and not the FDM 3D printers they show in the videos. They then created a mold around that 3D printed master using some kind of high temperature silicon rubber or something like that, and then they've used that to rotationally mold copies. In the macro shots, you can also see these tiny voids where bubbles have been trapped, which is a telltale sign of the process when it's done kind of poorly. That's the theory anyway. We'll have to crack this thing open to find out for sure. But how about that color? Well, full color 3D printing does exist and is actually quite impressive these days. Little Planet Factory is a website where you can order full color planets that really are 3D printed. No affiliate, but they use a process called color jet printing, or CJP, which is essentially a inkjet head with a binder as well, which bonds a fine white powder together, layer by layer, at the same time adding in color detail. And there's no reason you couldn't print a globe like this using that same CJP technology and achieve a very high level of surface and color detail. But there's two major issues. One, it wouldn't be translucent because the powder is opaque, and two, it would cost an absolute fortune compared to a molding approach. And if you go on their website, this actually 3D printed Earth model is 16 centimeters in diameter and costs over $200. On the other hand, these moon lamps can be easily had for 1/10 of that price. Okay, so it's not 3D printed color, but then just how the heck do they add an image to a sphere? Well, if you look at the image from certain angles, the details look really good, but from others, not so much. It's very clearly stretched and distorted towards the bottom of the sphere, and that's because they've used a process called water transfer printing, otherwise known as hydro dipping. Now, this is a super cool process. With hydro dipping, you can transfer complex full color designs to organic curved surfaces easily, and it's a really popular way of making otherwise bland products pop, like this helmet or this faux carbon fiber car dash. And you can try it at home too. I bought these water transfer sheets from Core Electronics here in Australia and printed up some interesting designs. They're provided by Adafruit, and their tutorial video is really good, linked here. Basically, the inkjet printable sheets have a PVA layer which dissolves as it floats on top of hot water, and from there you can slowly lower your part in and the sheet stretches and conforms around it. Once dry, you can protect the design with some clear lacquer, and bam, you've got a really cool finish that's just as durable as paint. There's no question that this product has been finished using the same process, not only due to the stretching and distorting of the image as it reaches the back of the globe, but also due to the way the air bubble voids look. They are totally white. This is because the thin water transfer film completely missed them as it coated the outside of the part. Alright, let's talk about Surfshark VPN. You guys know I only take on sponsorships for companies I believe in, so listen up. If you're new to VPNs, you can think of them as kind of like an internet portal to anywhere in the world. For example, you could be based here, but using a VPN, make it appear as if you're browsing the web from here. This is incredibly handy for accessing content online which may be geo-blocked in your country, but in addition, Surfshark uses military-grade encryption which renders your sensitive data unreadable by your ISP or a nosy public network. Legit, never log on to your bank on a public network without a VPN. However, Surfshark VPN is useful for a lot more than accessing geo-blocked content and protecting your identity online. You might not realize this, but the results Google serves you are based on where you're located in the world. So when I'm putting together tutorials and projects on this channel, I can use Surfshark to switch my location, for example, to this LA server, and bam, I can find purchase links and resources that you US guys can actually use. Surfshark VPN is very easy to install and use, but honestly the best bit is the price. By using the code MAKERS, you can get a massive 83% discount and 3 months free on a 24-month plan, bringing it down to just $2.49 a month on unlimited devices. I mean, do I really need to say much more? Links in the description. Well, I think I've been pondering this orb long enough. It's time to find out once and for all if this lamp is 3D printed or if it's a big lie. Unfortunately, the factory glued the base in place. Clearly, they don't see anyone using this for long enough to wear out the already tiny battery inside, so I had to carefully pry it apart. Unfortunately, a little damage was inevitable, but I was eventually able to pry the bottom cover away, and drum roll please. No. This is not 3D printed. As suspected, they've used some form of rotational molding to make it, with the internal surface being smooth with no layer lines, and there's even areas where you can see the plastic has flowed a little unevenly before solidifying. The digital LED circuit is actually pretty nice, with a dedicated white LED along with the RGB LEDs, and they're actually pretty damn bright with a very wide spread. I'm not entirely sure how it detects bumps. It might be this component, but that also could be some sort of crystal. So if you do know, then please let me know in the comments below. It's nice that the one cell LiPo isn't soldered into place, so you could swap that once it dies, but again, most people won't be prying their globes open once the battery stops holding a charge. Okay, so I think I know how this is made, but I wasn't satisfied to just leave the video saying, yeah, it's rotationally molded and it's not 3D printed without any hard evidence. I really wanted to find the smoking gun to prove that this is made using rotational molding, and it's the whole 3D printing aspect of it is kind of a farce. And it took me hours. It took me ages to find any evidence of how this is manufactured. There's various patents out there, but they're just like design patents that got no information on how they're manufactured, and there's heaps of videos showing them being 3D printed. But then I came across this video that left in a tiny little detail that gave the whole thing away. So this video is a factory tour of a company that makes custom 3D printed moon lamps. And the entire video is focused on 3D printing. And indeed, if you look at it, they have this humongous print farm. Like, it is massive, and they're all shown printing moon lamps. So you think, okay, well, clearly they're making them using 3D printing, but these are FDM/FFF 3D printers. They use a filament. So that means, you can see here, there's support material at the bottom. It's going to be pretty poor quality in a lot of areas, but sure, okay, 3D printed, it's definitely possible. But then you sort of skip forwards in the video, and you get to this point here. Now, a print this size on a filament-based 3D printer, you're looking at around 20 hours to get a decent finish. 20 hours each. It doesn't get quicker. Each one takes about 20 hours. You know, the little ones take slightly less time, but 20 hours per piece, and these racks show hundreds of these. Now, yes, they have heaps of 3D printers, but 20 hours each for a product that sells how much these sell for doesn't really make much commercial sense. So what's really going on? Well, on the rack, you can see this sort of finish on some of them. You can see that they've actually done the hydro dipping thing to a couple of these. Now, they could have done it to a 3D print, sure, but we're getting a little bit closer to the origins of this lamp and how this is actually made. But again, this whole video is referencing 3D printing until we get to this scene. Now, apparently, this woman is cleaning up the edges of 3D prints. But what's that in the background? Could that possibly be molds? Molds for rotationally molding? And they are spherical shaped? Perhaps they're molding this? And what's in that 44-gallon drum of this horrible white liquid? Could they possibly be the plastic they're using in those rotational molds? And then as the camera pans across, it cuts just as it gets to that guy on the right who maybe he's, I don't know, filling up the molds and putting them into the oven to be made. The video doesn't reference this at all. It's all about 3D printing moon lamps. And that's pretty wild to me. So basically what I think is going on, I could be wrong, but they do make them 3D printed. Some of the listings may actually be 3D printed from PLA, but I think the vast majority of them are actually mass produced using those rotational molds in PVC. And again, there was a little bit of evidence in that video from what this is manufactured from. I do believe it's PVC because the packaging does say PVC and ABS. The ABS being the end cap, I think, because there's evidence of injection molding of that. So I think that's the ABS part, and I think this is PVC. Now, there's more evidence to that. The sound is very reminiscent of like a PVC part with lots of plasticizers. It's quite soft, and it's got a really horrible smell to it. I don't want to do the burn test because PVC is quite poisonous when you burn it, but I do believe these are made from PVC. which would make sense because you've got a vat of liquid plastic, and I don't believe they're using a 2-part resin with like a catalyst. It doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like they're using a liquid PVC to manufacture these using rotational molding. A big thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video, and if you want to find one of these moon lamps for yourself, even if it's not 3D printed, it's still pretty cool. There's links in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video on Maker's Muse, then maybe consider subscribing, whereas my aim to empower creativity through technology. Catch you later, guys. Bye.